All right, you sleepyheads. Ready for a little reality check? Today we're diving deep into the wonderfully absurd world of Salvador Dali. Our mission: figuring out how to make a name for yourself in this crowded world. One that doesn't just fade into oblivion. It's like a guide to becoming a poetry slam rock star. Maybe without the melting clocks, but definitely with a style that will make you unforgettable.
What really fascinates me about our text here is the blatantly provocative opening. Imagine this: a smoky Parisian bar, and there's Dali casually selling his signature. Like a scene from a film noir, only with more mustache.
Yeah, man. I can practically smell the stale red wine and galazes. This guy, an artistic genius, is chilling with ordinary folks and turning his name into a work of art, into a commodity. I bet if I tried that in my local bar, my signature would end up as a coaster at best.
That's exactly the point. Dali understood the power of his name, its value. He wasn't just selling a scribble on a napkin, he was selling a piece of his legend. And that should really make us think. How do we present ourselves? How do we build our own brand, even if we're not all surrealist masters?
Okay, but how do we do that? Do we all have to show up to meetings in lobster costumes now?
Well, maybe not lobster costumes, but that rebellious spirit, that I do my own thing attitude, that's definitely part of it. The text calls it the Dali method in a nutshell. First, embrace the absurd contradiction. Second, tell a story so good it's almost disgusting. And third, develop your signature move and action that makes you unmistakable.
All right, let's break down the absurd contradiction thing. The text has some truly wild examples. Dali shows up at press conferences in a diving suit, or throws himself in front of cars because he sees himself as a living work of art. Are we talking about stuff like that?
Absolutely. It's about breaking expectations and grabbing attention. Imagine a banker who dresses like a punk rocker or a poet who swears like a sailor. These kinds of unexpected combinations make people sit up and take notice.
So does that mean I have to figure out how to break the rules in my life? But how do I do that without ending up on the worst dressed list?
Good question. It's not about just being eccentric. It's about finding the contradiction within yourself, in your job, in your art, and then really cranking it up. What's your unique perspective? What expectations can you turn on their head?
So it's not just about shock value, but about using surprise to highlight what makes me special, my unique point of view.
Exactly. And that brings us to the next point: the disgustingly good story. Talent alone is not enough. You need a story that captivates people, that sparks their imagination.
The example in the text with the guy who paints 2 lines on a canvas and becomes a millionaire is pretty crazy, but also kind of funny. Art is all well and good, but if you can't sell the story behind it...
Then you're probably not going to see a fat bank account. There are countless talented people out there, but the ones who really stand out have managed to spin a captivating story around their name, their work. Think of it this way: your name is a brand, and your story is the marketing campaign.
All right, so we've got the absurd contradiction to grab attention and a killer story to keep people hooked. What about that last point, the signature move?
Ah, yes, the signature move. It's about creating an element that's instantly recognizable and inseparably linked to your name. Think Dali's mustache, Michael Jackson's white glove, or Steve Jobs' black turtleneck.
Okay, I think I'm starting to get it. It's about creating an iconic image or a catchphrase, something that makes people immediately think of you.
Exactly. And now it's your turn, dear listeners. What's your signature move? What makes you stand out in a crowded room?
That's a good question. You don't think about that every day, but maybe you should.
Absolutely. Because if you don't have a signature move, you run the risk of getting lost in the crowd, and nobody wants that. So how about we apply these principles to the world of poetry slams? The stage, the spotlight, the words, the perfect place to make a name for yourself that people won't soon forget.
Yeah, man. Finally, a practical application. Let's talk about poetry slam domination, Dali style.
Now it's getting really interesting. Our test discusses the WTF punchline technique, where you use unexpected twists and absurdities to create lines that stick in the audience's mind.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Give me an example.
Imagine a normal line being, "I was sad when she left." Totally fine, but also totally replaceable. But what if you said instead, "She left and took my kidney with her"? Boom, you've got everyone's attention.
Whoa, hold on. Did she just steal his kidney? What's going on here?
That's exactly the reaction you want. It's shocking, it's funny, it's bizarre, and it makes you curious. It's about bringing that Dali-esque absurdity into your work.
Brilliant. It's like taking a normal punchline and turning it into a surreal masterpiece.
Exactly. And it's that creative audacity that can make your name linger long after the last microphone drop.
So it's about like blowing people's minds in the best possible way. I like it.
And that, my friend, is the essence of the Dolly method applied to poetry slams. It's about creating words that are as memorable and thought-provoking as a melting clock. Speaking of melting clocks, our text highly recommends checking out the book Poetry Master Poetry Power in 7 Days.
Oh, a book recommendation. Our listeners love that kind of stuff. Poetry Master, Poetry Power in 7 days. Noted. We'll put the link in the show notes, of course, for anyone who wants to delve deeper into the art of poetic domination. But wait, before we get lost in the world of iambic pentameter and rhyming schemes, back to the core message. Make a name for yourself, no matter what field you're in.
Excellent point. It's easy to get bogged down in the details, but the basic principles are universal. Whether you're a poet, a painter, an entrepreneur, or a barista, the Dolly method provides a framework for shaping your personal brand to make it unforgettable.
So what does this mean for our listeners? How do we take this wild, surreal journey and apply it to our own lives? Because let's face it, we're not all going to become the next Salvador Dali.
True, but we can all learn from his approach. It's about celebrating your individuality, telling a compelling story, and finding that one element that sets you apart from the crowd.
It's about being bold, taking risks, and maybe even provoking people a little bit. But above all, it's about being yourself, only on steroids, the superhero version of yourself.
Exactly. It's about amplifying your unique voice, your perspective, your style. Don't be afraid to be different, to be bold, to be memorable. In a world that constantly tries to put us in boxes, the Dolly method is a call to break out and create your own damn masterpiece.
Well said. Embrace your inner freak, because that's what makes you, you. But before we unleash a horde of mustache-twirling, diving suit-wearing poets on the world, let's take a short break. When we get back, we'll dig even deeper into the text and look at some practical tips on how to turn your name into a legend. Stay tuned.
Welcome back from the break. I hope you've got your notepads ready because things are about to get juicy. Today, we're dissecting one of the most important aspects of building your personal brand: storytelling, the art of telling stories that blow people's minds.
Okay, everyone knows that storytelling is important. But what exactly makes a story disgustingly good? Do I have to start incorporating bodily fluids into my poetry slams now?
Yuck.
Yeah.
Let's keep things PG rated, shall we? But you're touching on something important. A disgustingly good story isn't necessarily disgusting, it's just unforgettable. Imagine a story so powerful, so captivating, that it lingers in people's minds like a delicious but slightly disturbing dessert.
Okay, now I'm getting hungry, but also a little scared. What are the ingredients for a story that you can't forget?
First, you need conflict. Every good story has a struggle, an obstacle to overcome. That can be an external challenge, like fighting a dragon, or, say, trying to get your poems published in a prestigious literary magazine.
Or trying to get through airport security in a diving suit.
Exactly. Or it can be an internal conflict, like battling self-doubt or struggling to find your own voice as an artist.
So conflict is important. What else?
Then you need stakes. What's at stake? Why should people care about your story? The higher the stakes, the more people will be on the edge of their seats.
So it's not enough to just talk about my struggles as a poet. I have to present it in a way that makes people feel like they're sitting on hot coals, wondering if I'll win or lose in the end.
Exactly. And don't forget the element of surprise. A good story needs twists and turns, moments that defy all expectations.
Like the kidney-stealing ex-girlfriend we talked about earlier.
Yes. Or maybe it's a sudden shift in perspective, a moment of realization that changes everything. It's those unexpected elements that keep people engaged and elevate your story above the mundane.
Okay, conflict, stakes, surprise.
Yeah.
It's starting to feel like we're writing a Hollywood blockbuster. But what about authenticity? Does my story have to be 100% true?
That's a tricky question. On the one hand, authenticity is super important. People respond to genuine stories that feel real and relatable. But on the other hand, we're talking about creating a myth, a legend. And sometimes a little embellishment doesn't hurt.
So it's okay to take some creative liberties as long as I stay true to the core of my message, my experience.
Exactly. Think of it this way. You're the artist, and your story is the canvas. You have the freedom to paint it in the colors you want, as long as the end result is a work of art that is captivating and true to your vision.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've ticked off the absurd contradiction, the disgustingly good story, and the signature move. Is there anything else we need to know about the Dolly method before we unleash our newfound brilliance on the world?
Yes, there's one more thing I want to address, and it runs through all three elements of the Dolly method: the power of provocation. Dolly was a master at pushing boundaries, challenging norms, and shocking people. And we can all learn something from that.
I feel like we've been dancing around this topic all along. Using shock value to grab attention. That's a fine line, right? How can I be provocative without being offensive?
It's definitely a tightrope walk. The key is to be intentional with your provocation. Ask yourself, what do I want to achieve by pushing boundaries? Do I want to spark a discussion, challenge a common belief, or just piss people off?
So it's not about being shocking just for the sake of being shocking. It's about using provocation strategically to make a statement, to get people thinking.
Exactly. Think about some of Dali's most famous works. The melting clocks, the lobster telephone, the burning giraffe. These images are bizarre, surreal, even disturbing, but they also force us to question our perceptions of reality, time, and art itself.
I see what you mean. It's about using provocation to make a statement, to challenge the status quo.
Exactly. And that's a powerful tool, whether you're a poet, an artist, an entrepreneur, or just someone who wants to make a difference in the world. Don't be afraid to rattle some cages, to shake things up.
I kind of have the urge to put on a diving suit and run through a museum right now.
You can save that for your next poetry slam. But the point is, don't shy away from the power of provocation. Use it wisely, use it strategically, and use it to make a name for yourself that people will never forget.
Okay, I feel inspired but also a little overwhelmed. That's a lot to take in.
Yes, it is. But that's also the beauty of it. The Dali method isn't a one-size-fits-all recipe. It's a way of thinking about building a personal brand that's as unique and unforgettable as you are.
So it's about taking these principles, these ideas, and adapting them to our own style, our own goals.
Exactly. And the journey is just as important as the destination. Enjoy the process of discovering, experimenting, and yes, even failing. Because through those experiences, we find our true voice and build a name that resonates with people.
That's right. It's not about overnight success, but about the ongoing journey of self-discovery and creative expression.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe along the way, you'll even inspire others to discover their own absurdity, their own unique stories, their own signature moves.
And that's what it's all about in the end, right? Making the world a little more colorful, leaving behind a legacy that is both meaningful and memorable. And hey, if we can do it with a touch of Dali flair, all the better.
Before we unleash our listeners on the world armed with their newfound knowledge, let's briefly return to the world of poetry slams. After all, that's what sparked this whole deep dive in the first place.
Right. We can't forget our aspiring poetry superstars out there who are eager to unleash their inner Dali on stage.
Exactly. So for all you wordsmiths and poetry geniuses out there, our next segment has a special treat. Practical tips and techniques on how to turn your next poetry slam into a masterpiece of absurdity and unforgettable brilliance.
Oh yeah, I'm looking forward to that. We'll be right back after a short commercial break. Stay tuned. Welcome back, you poetry warriors. Ready to unleash your inner Dali and hypnotize the masses with your lyrical genius. We've got the absurd contradiction, the disgustingly good story, and the signature move down pat. Now let's get to the nitty-gritty. How do you write poems that are as memorable as a melting clock on a tree?
Remember that WTF punchline technique we talked about earlier? It's time to put it into practice. It's all about taking those everyday emotions, those familiar experiences, and twisting them into something unexpected, something that makes people go, huh, what was that?
It's like injecting a normal poem with a dose of surreal adrenaline.
Exactly. Let's say you're writing a poem about heartbreak. Instead of writing, my heart broke into 1,000 pieces, you could say something like, my heart spontaneously combusted and transformed into a flock of pigeons.
Okay, that's definitely unexpected. But why pigeons?
Why not? It's about creating an image that's absurd yet poignant at the same time. It makes the listeners think, what the hell does that mean? And that's exactly what you want. You want your poems to linger in people's minds long after the performance is over.
So it's not just about being weird for the sake of being weird. It's about using absurdity to create a deeper impact, to evoke emotions in people that they've never felt before.
Right, and don't be afraid to experiment with language, imagery, and form. Break the rules. Just as Dali challenged the conventions of art, you can challenge the conventions of poetry. Play with words, create unexpected combinations, and don't be afraid to make your audience a little uncomfortable.
Speaking of uncomfortable, how do we translate the concept of the signature move into the world of poetry slams?
This is where your stage presence comes into play. Think about how you move, how you speak, how you interact with the audience. Do you have a certain gesture you always make? A catchphrase you repeat? A way of looking at the audience makes them feel like they're the only ones in the room.
So it's about finding those little details that make you special, that create anticipation and excitement in the audience.
Exactly. And remember, your signature move doesn't have to be anything grand or theatrical. It can be something as simple as a pause, a whisper, or a raised eyebrow. The key is to use it consistently and intentionally so that it becomes an integral part of your performance.
Now it's clicking. It's about taking these core elements of the Dali method and weaving them into every aspect of our poetry, our performance, our entire stage persona.
Precisely. It's about creating a holistic experience that is both captivating and thought-provoking. And don't forget the most important ingredient, your passion. Let your love for poetry, your desire to connect with the audience, shine through in every word you speak.
Because in the end, that's what truly makes a name unforgettable, right? The passion, the authenticity, the raw energy that comes from sharing something you truly believe in.
Absolutely. So go out there, you fearless poets, and let your words set the world on fire. Embrace the absurd, tell your stories with conviction, and find your signature move. The stage is yours.
And remember, dear listeners, whether you're poets, painters, or just people who want to leave a lasting impression on this crazy world, the Dali method reminds us that it's okay to be different, to be bold, to be unapologetically yourself.
Because in the end, it's the names of those who dare to stand out, who challenge the status quo, and who make an indelible mark on the world that are remembered.
So go out there, embrace your inner absurdity, and turn your name into a legend. And don't forget to check out Poetry Master Poetry Power in 7 days for some inspiration on your journey to poetic greatness. Until next time, be creative.